Jack Riley had spent most of his life on the ranch. The wide open plains stretched out as far as the eye could see, and the sky seemed to go on forever. The land was harsh and the work was harder, but Jack had never known anything else. He had been raised here just like his father before him. There was something about the land, the cattle, and the long hours that had shaped him into the man he was. Strong, independent, and quiet. Jack never needed much, and he certainly didn't need anyone. His face had the rough, sun-kissed look of someone who had spent far too many years under the blazing sun, working the fields and tending to the animals. His body, tall and lean, carried the marks of a lifetime of physical labor. But it was his eyes that told the story. Cold, distant, and always looking ahead. Jack didn't have time for feelings, not anymore. That all started to change the day Emily Walker came to work on the ranch. Emily was everything Jack wasn't. She was new to the land, fresh from the city, with wide eyes and a bright smile that could light up even the darkest barn. Her optimism was contagious, and she had a determination to match her energy. She had arrived a few months earlier, looking for a new life far from the noise and stress of the city. She had heard about the ranch and needed work, so she came. Jack was skeptical at first. A city girl on a ranch? It didn't seem like the right fit, but Emily surprised him. She was strong, capable, and willing to learn. She wasn't afraid of the hard work, and her enthusiasm slowly started to wear down Jack's walls. He didn't talk much, but she was always there, ready to help, asking questions, and sometimes just offering a quiet, comforting presence when the work seemed overwhelming. It was strange for Jack. He didn't know what to do with someone like Emily. But for the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to her company, even if he didn't show it. They spent their days working together. Emily was quick to learn the ropes, feeding the animals, fixing fences, and making sure everything ran smoothly. Jack noticed how she seemed to handle everything with ease, how her smile never faded no matter how tough the day was. He admired that even if he never said so. But despite their growing bond, Jack couldn't shake the feeling of being unsettled. There was something about Emily that he couldn't quite figure out, something that made him uneasy in a way he wasn't used to. It wasn't just the work or the ranch that kept them close. Emily seemed to have a way of getting under Jack's skin. At first it was innocent, shared jokes, light-hearted conversations over lunch, but as the days went on, Jack noticed himself paying more attention to her. It wasn't just the way she worked or the way she laughed, it was something else. It was the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her past, her dreams, and her hope for a better future. It was the way she carried herself full of life and energy, something Jack hadn't felt in a long time. But there was a tension too. Emily didn't hide her emotions the way Jack did. She wore her heart on her sleeve, and that made Jack uncomfortable. He wasn't used to it. He didn't know how to open up the way she did. But somehow she seemed to see through his stoic exterior, and that made him feel exposed, vulnerable in a way he had spent years trying to avoid. Then came the storm. The sky had darkened quickly that afternoon, the winds picking up as the clouds rolled in. It wasn't uncommon for storms to strike out here, but this one felt different. The ranch was in the middle of nowhere, and when a storm hit, it could cause real damage. Jack had already started moving the cattle into the barn when Emily came running over, her face filled with worry. "Jack, the herd's breaking through the fence over by the east pasture," she shouted over the howling wind. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed his hat and motioned for Emily to follow him. They couldn't let the cattle scatter. It could cost them everything. They climbed onto horseback and rode together through the fields, rain pouring down in sheets, the wind whipping at their faces. It was the kind of work Jack was used to, hard, physical, and demanding. But there was something different about this time. Emily was there beside him, riding with the same intensity, the same determination. She wasn't afraid of the storm or the work, and Jack, for the first time in a long while, didn't mind that she was there. The storm raged as they reached the fence. The herd had already made it through the broken gate, and the animals were scattering in every direction. Jack cursed under his breath and spurred his horse forward, chasing after the runaway cattle. Emily followed, her horse galloping beside his, the two of them working as one to corral the animals. It was in the chaos that things went wrong. One of the cattle, spooked by the storm, charged at Emily's horse. She barely had time to react before the animal knocked her off the saddle and she fell hard to the ground. "Emily," Jack shouted, dismounting quickly and rushing to her side. She was lying there, gasping for breath, clutching her leg. The pain was clear on her face. Jack knelt beside her, trying to assess the damage. I can't hold it in anymore. Emily gasped through clenched teeth, her face pale with pain. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He froze, not knowing what to do. It wasn't the pain that stopped him. It was the vulnerability in her voice, the raw emotion that she had kept hidden. For a split second, he saw something in her eyes. Fear, pain, and maybe even something deeper. Jack had spent his whole life shutting down emotions, keeping them buried deep inside. He wasn't used to this kind of rawness, this kind of openness. And now, with Emily on the ground, hurt and vulnerable, he didn't know how to handle it. He reached out to help her up, but his hands shook. He couldn't bring himself to say the right words to comfort her. His hesitation was evident, and Emily, seeing his struggle, looked away, her expression faltering. The storm continued to rage around them, the rain coming down harder than ever. And in that moment, Jack hesitated. He didn't know how to help her, and it scared him more than anything else. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he knelt beside Emily. The rain continued to pour, the storm raging around them as if the world itself were crashing down. He looked at Emily, her face twisted in pain as she clutched her leg. The moment had arrived, and yet Jack felt frozen, his body unable to act in the way he knew he should. Emily's words echoed in his mind. I can't hold it in anymore. They weren't just about her injury. They were about everything she had kept hidden, the pain, the frustration, the need for help. And yet Jack wasn't sure how to give that help. He wanted to be the strong one. He wanted to be the man who could save the day, who could fix things, but right now he didn't know how. His mind raced, but his hands didn't move. The guilt and fear hit him harder than the storm itself. You're gonna be okay, Jack said, his voice sounding weak even to his own ears. It was the only thing he could muster. He was scared, unsure of what to do or say, and it came out as a hollow attempt at comfort. Emily didn't look at him directly. She turned her face toward the ground, her breath still shallow, trying to control the pain. Jack reached for her leg, hoping to help, but his hesitation was painfully obvious. He didn't want to make it worse. What if I hurt her more? He thought. That was his biggest fear. The fear of doing the wrong thing, of pushing her away by being too cold or worse, making things worse. He had never been good with feelings, never been good at showing the care that others needed. It was something he had buried deep inside for years, and now, facing Emily's pain, it was all coming to the surface. Emily's breath caught again, and she winced. It hurts, Jack, she whispered, her voice shaky. The words pierced through Jack like a knife. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how to make it better. I don't know what to do, he admitted, his voice almost breaking. It was the first time he had said it out loud. He had always been the one who could fix things. The ranch, the animals, the fences, he had a solution for everything. But this was different. Emily wasn't a problem to be solved. She was a person, and he wasn't sure he knew how to be there for her in this moment of vulnerability. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His mind raced as he tried to think of something, anything to help. But the rain kept coming, and Emily's pained expression only made things worse. He could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear that had been buried inside him for so long, the fear of not being enough, of not knowing how to fix things, of being exposed. Emily shifted, trying to push herself up, but the pain in her leg made her cry out. Jack reached out quickly, his hand on her shoulder, but she flinched, pulling away. It was a small movement, but it hit Jack harder than anything else. I've done something wrong, he thought. I've made it worse. Don't pull away from me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. His heart was racing, and he felt a mix of frustration and helplessness. Emily looked up at him then, her eyes meeting his. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at him as if weighing something in her mind, and then after what felt like an eternity she spoke. You're afraid, aren't you? Emily said softly, her voice full of understanding yet tinged with a bit of sadness. You don't know what to do with me. Jack's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't an accusation, but it hit him like one. He had been afraid his whole life, afraid of feeling too much, afraid of letting anyone in. He had built walls around his heart so thick that nothing, not even the storm, could get through. But now with Emily, those walls were starting to crack. She could see right through him, and that terrified him. I don't know how to be what you need, Jack said, his voice low, almost inaudible. Emily shifted again, trying to sit up, despite the pain in her leg. Jack, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be here, she said, her voice soft but firm. I'm not asking for anything more than that." Jack was silent for a long time. He wasn't sure what to say, how to respond. The rain fell harder and the wind howled around them, but it was as though time had stopped in that moment. Emily's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time, Jack truly heard them. He didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to be there. But being there was harder than Jack had ever imagined. He reached out once more, this time with more certainty, and gently took Emily's hand in his. His touch was warm, though hesitant at first. Emily looked at him, and for a moment their eyes locked in silence. Then slowly, Jack helped her sit up, making sure not to hurt her leg any more than it already was. "I've got you," Jack said softly, his voice steadier now. "I'll help you. I'll take care of you." The words came out more naturally this time, like a promise he didn't realize he was making until the moment was right. Emily nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. She winced, but the smile was there. It wasn't the perfect smile, but it was real, and in that moment, that was all that mattered. Jack helped her back onto her horse, making sure she was secure before they started the slow ride back to the ranch. The storm raged around them, but in the quiet of their shared space, Jack felt something shift inside him. The walls he had built around his heart were still there, but for the first time in a long while, they felt less like a fortress and more like something he could begin to break down. As they rode back, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. Jack could feel Emily's presence beside him, not as a distraction, but as someone who understood the struggle of being vulnerable, of needing help, and not knowing how to ask for it. She had been through her own battles, and now, perhaps, they could face them together. But as they reached the ranch, the reality of the moment settled in. Jack had made a promise, one he wasn't sure he could keep. He had promised to help, to be there for her. But was he ready to open up in the way she needed him to? The storm may have passed, but there was another storm brewing inside him, one he wasn't sure he was prepared to face.